Keith Chapman and Tim Lancaster are the best young landscape gardeners in Britain. In just 3 days, they're capable of transforming a bare plot like this to a garden like this. It's February 2007, and it's the World Skills Selection Competition in Warwickshire, organised by UK Skills. 60 young people will be whittled down to make a British team of 23 to go to World Skills in Japan. Tim and Keith have to build a garden in just 3 days. The 7-metre square plot was prepared by students at Warwickshire College, and the evening before the competition, Keith and Tim get their hands on the soil.
It's a bit wet, make it difficult to work with.
It's clay, but it's workable. Work with every soil you get, don't you? So work with what you get given.
UK Skills allocate the competitors a training manager to help coach them up to international standards. He's also the judge at the UK selection event.
In the plots themselves, there's a pond to be built with a waterfall. There's a cantilever deck which goes out over the actual water. That's quite a big deck, and obviously there's paving.
You've got to keep your joints absolutely perfectly spot on, tight. All your gaps between your deck boards are all equal spacings, between 5 and 7 mil. Make sure it's level, square.
The key to a pond is to work out of a pond, not work into a pond. When you're looking at stone, pick it up and look at it. Don't just pick it up and chuck it in. And step back and look at your work. Don't just work on top of yourself.
World Skills is held every 2 years, and the competition helps raise the profile and standards of vocational skills around the world. Landscape gardening is just one of the 50 different skills which will be represented in Japan in November. Young people under 22 compete for gold medals, and the British team is hoping to improve on its performance in Helsinki 2 years ago. Keith and Tim produced an amazing garden, finishing well within the time limit. But will it be good enough to get them to Japan? The standard has to be high enough to compete for medals.
Landscape gardening, please.
Well done, mate.
Well done.
Have you enjoyed your week?
And yours?
Loved it.
Tim, fine.
You want to know?
Yeah.
You will be going to Japan.
Well done, lads.
Okay. All the best.
Thank you.
Mwah.
Cheers, darling.
Today, Japan seems a million miles away. It's a snowy morning in North Yorkshire. Keith Chapman works for a local landscaping company, and today he's helping to build a small communal garden on a new housing estate. His boss got to know Keith when on the industrial placement year of his BTEC course in horticulture. Eddie Miller took him on full-time when Keith graduated with a merit 2 years ago.
To sort of describe Keith in a nutshell, he's a very hard-working young man, very reliable, which is something that every employer needs, more so than anything I would say, and he can grasp things fairly quickly.
Righto.
He listens, and as with gardens, most people's gardens privately, they like to chop and change their minds, so you've got to be able to accept people changing their minds and do what they want and change the garden for their needs. And Keith's ideal for that kind of thing.
The detailed plan for this is not much more than appalling. A first-year student at our college could do 10 times better. It's basically what you get on every job in landscaping. There's no set measurements on it, so although the plan is inadequate and it makes our job harder at times, it is eventually going to be helping me push towards my world skills target of the plans there aren't always complete and they make you use your own initiatives. We concreted it out, put the posts in, and we also screwed all of these together and they've got a little nail in the top. All the nails are drove in on an angle, so this one in effect is one of the main posts, then this one's nailed to this one, so that's pulling, all the nails are pulling them all this way towards this until we get down to a low point. and then the direction changes again back up to the next high point. This job in particular, we've had a lot of variation in it. We've got a path to do with gravelling, we've got planting to do, we've got timber work. It is almost like a little sort of competition-y garden with everything you do in it.
Keith's own garden at home was one of his first landscaping projects, although it now looks as if it needs a bit of an overhaul. His mum remembers how he rather stumbled into the trade after leaving school with 6 GCSEs.
Landscaping was just one of the options that we looked at the local college, Askham Bryan, and we went down to an introduction day, and he just saw that, you know, he might actually enjoy it. Didn't really look at much else after that, did you?
No.
And fell into it, and well, he had a great time. He came on leaps and bounds when he went to college, just grew up, started drinking beer, started noticing what girls were like, and had a good time academically as well.
Tim Lancaster lives and works 45 miles away from Keith Chapman. He took the same college course as Keith after he left school with 8 GCSEs. Tim got a good grounding in plants and soil science on the BTEC course. He's been working for a property developer since he was a lad during the school holidays. He gets involved in everything from basic digger operations to managing a major landscaping scheme at his employer's property.
We've put 10,000 trees around this 6.5 acres of my boss's land that we're turning into gardens. There's ranges from pines to hollies, oaks. Put some dogwood in as well for colour. And then once all the trees have got established, we put in ferns and other ground plants in, so to cut down on maintenance.
A major part of the project was grading down a steep sloping field. Tim was given free rein on how to achieve a good result.
Originally the field come down on a slope and it were all unlevel and everything. That tennis pavilion that's there were like stuck about 8 foot up in the air. So we've lifted all the levels of the field so we can landscape around it. So this summer we're going to get it all rotivated up and reseeded, and hopefully get his grass growing so he can have a bit of a 5-a-side football field for his son.
His BTEC experience was useful when designing a planting scheme for a colourful and functional screen for the tennis pavilion.
We did this planting basically to just hide the mass of timber. We've got phormiums, lavender, some black lace, fatsias. We've got the bronzy coloured carex to complement the lavenders when they start growing. Moving on to the bamboos to make the noise like you can hear now.
So what's Tim's view on what makes a good landscaper?
Attention to detail, having a good eye for the job, knowing what's right and what's wrong. If it isn't right, taking it back out, redoing it, everything's got to be spot on, especially if it's like a private job. You can't expect to get paid for work that ain't good.
Harewood House in Yorkshire, an 18th century pile owned by the Queen's cousin. It's got one of the best Japanese gardens in the country, and Keith and Tim have come on a reconnaissance mission to get some inspiration for the garden they're likely to have to build at WorldSkills. Japanese gardens use highly stylised representations of nature. Harewood has recently built a mountain gorge.
So the gorge represents this sort of real sort of tight, dark, rugged, rocky, almost scary place. And then when you've kind of travelled in the mountains, you eventually end up in the foothills in a valley full of kind of opportunities and vistas. So you end up in this sort of yin and yang effect. This is a very old Japanese maple that was planted in the 1930s.
Got a lot of character, hasn't it?
It has, and as you see, it just cascades all the way down and covers a big area. It's texturally a rock, so it's a key sort of structural part of the garden. And it's almost a kind of a statement as that this is the kind of the garden this is because I'm here. We're now reaching the waterfall, which is another kind of endearing feature of the garden. And this creates this lovely ambience, lovely atmosphere. And of course, water is important in Japanese gardens, you know. Water needs to flow from the east, which is the blue dragon, to the white tiger in the west. It mustn't flow the other way. But you've also got light reflection. You know, you're trying to amplify the light in the garden, creating this silver ribbon of water. Whatever water features that you create needs to resemble the sea.
Yeah.
So you need to have a sea coast, shale and shingle, and so the water ripples like the dragon's skin over the pebbles. The most important thing is that you're taking something from nature and building it in a garden, because it's symbolic, basically. It's all about spirituality. It's all about representation, rather than, you know, having something that looks beautiful. Yeah.
This is Askham Bryan College in York, where Tim and Keith trained. Their focus on hard landscaping and garden design has been priceless for their world skills training. They've come back to meet up with their training manager, Harry Turner, who wants to hear about their trip to Harewood House. Harry uses a pull coaching method to encourage the lads to explain what they've learned and how they'll interpret the information for the World Skills competition garden.
This rockery, you said, was fantastic. Tell me why you think it's fantastic. What was the thing, what drew you to it?
It's as if it's just occurred naturally, not as if that was made 5 or 6 years ago, as if it's always been there, and the bulbs have grown naturally, the plants have just formed over the years.
But if we needed to recreate that in miniature on a 7 by 7 metre plot...
In miniature, we'd have to make a good size mound to support sort of reasonable sized rocks in it and not be worried about covering a lot up, because it's the bigger picture that's above it that is what we're looking for.
Yeah, stones shouldn't look like they sit on top of soil. Look like they should be buried into soil by at least 2/3 of the actual depth, yeah? Right, those stepping stones going across the water there. So, Tim, what's your thoughts on that?
It creates a different sense of the water, how it flows through. It's called a thread effect, where it narrows the flow of water right down as if it's a long thread.
The trick is to be able to recreate that on a small area, yeah? But you've made a good start today.
To stand a chance of winning in Japan, the lads will need to spend the next 8 months refining their skills. They may work separately most of the time, but when they get together for competitions, they form a formidable partnership.
Competitions is just sort of like working to your extreme of working, isn't it?
Yeah, when you're at work, you stop and have a chat and have a laugh, but when you're in a competition, you're just like in what's called the zone.
We don't talk to each other, we both know what we can do and we both trust each other to get on with it.